Local programming on KRWG Public Media made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
This is KRWG Public Media, TV, radio, online. News that matters. Now, across the Mesilla Valley and the borderland, the stories that shape our community. From the KRWG Broadcast Center at New Mexico State University, this is Newsmakers.
At the beginning of April, New Mexico marked 1 year as one of now 21 states with legal adult use cannabis sales. Since then, $300 million in revenue has been generated. The executive director of the New Mexico Cannabis Chamber of Commerce, Ben Lewinger, will help us understand what that means for the state's economy and to offer his perspective on the future of the industry. Later, Marvina Thomas, founder and CEO of 420 Collections, talks about her experience becoming one of the first women of color to be a multi-state operator after launching her business in Las Cruces. First, Cannabis Chamber Executive Director Ben Lewinger. Welcome, Ben, back to KRWG.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Well, it's good to see you. Let's talk first about what those numbers mean. The overall revenue, $300 million. What does that mean for New Mexicans?
So it's actually more. We just got the March 2023 numbers in. So the total sales are 488 million. And I'm not sure exactly what that is from a tax perspective, but I think it's going to be over 30 million in tax revenue for the state.
So what do you think that will mean in terms of tax revenue when we talk about the state level versus the local level? What kind of difference will that make in communities around the state?
Well, I think it's communities that have been underserved, borderland communities, places like Sunland Park, places like Tucumcari, New Mexico, Clovis, New Mexico, Hobbs and Lovington, places that have a closer proximity to the Texas border. I think those are the communities that are going to realize the biggest immediate benefit from this brand new industry. This is new money, and it's never going to be the kind of money to replace oil and gas revenue, for example, but a fully mature cannabis industry will be the 15th biggest industry in our state. And that means revenue not only for the state, but also for those counties and municipalities that desperately need new sources of revenue.
What can you tell us about local ownership versus ownership that came from other states? Do you know anything about what kind of percentage we're looking at this point?
I'm not sure of a percentage. Lots of times those transactions aren't as easy to surface as you would like them to be. New Mexico has had a medical cannabis program since 2009, and some of those larger producers that existed in the medical program, they have been acquired by MSOs or multi-state operators, in some cases operators from even out of the U.S., Canadian companies. And that's a trend that we're going to continue to see in New Mexico. And a lot of the ways that New Mexico went about legalizing cannabis was really centering small and medium homegrown New Mexico businesses. So the challenge for those businesses now are to make a better product, have a better understanding of their customers so they can continue to thrive alongside these really large, well-funded businesses that, they're making an impact in New Mexico for certain.
There was a lot of talk about the social justice aspect of this industry and also what it would mean for those incarcerated for convictions for marijuana. What can you tell us about the progress we've made on that front?
I think that we've made a lot of progress. The same time that the Cannabis Regulation Act, which is the enabling legislation for cannabis in our state, the same time that passed in special session in 2021, there was a sibling bill, automatic expungement for anybody who had nonviolent cannabis crimes. And that's, it's important that passed at the same time, because I would say that component, making sure that folks who are incarcerated or who are continuing to deal with charges for something that's now legal, it's as important to legalization that those charges have a clean way of being removed from somebody's record. Unfortunately, it turns out it was a little bit more difficult than just, going into a computer system and doing select all, delete. And one of the cannabis bills that did go the distance this last legislative session was a bill that kind of cleaned up the language around automatic expungement, urged the courts to create an administrative process for doing that. So I think that we're going to start to see, and some estimates are there are over 50,000 people who this would affect in New Mexico. So I think we're going to start to see some of those records be cleaned in very short order. And then in terms of social justice, in statute was the creation of a cannabis regulatory advisory committee. And they have been meeting monthly or as often as possible for since over a year now, and they have come up with a list of 8 suggestions that I think are equivalent to a social equity program in New Mexico. And it's important to remember that the hallmark of the way that New Mexico legalized cannabis was it was wide open for everybody. Anybody who wanted to apply for a license and who submitted a completed application were awarded a license, compared to other states like New York, who is legalizing now, where they had a quota. So there was only a certain number of licenses that would be issued. And it's impossible, if you have a quota system, for those licenses to not go to the wealthy and well-connected. So the way that New Mexico did it, opening it up for everybody to apply for a license, is how social equity was really written into and is part of the DNA of our cannabis program in New Mexico.
Some edibles look like candy. They're made to look like candy. And in the months after legal adult use sales began, there was a flurry of warnings and stories about these showing up in schools. And I'm wondering what you can tell us about what kind of challenge that has presented for families with children and in schools around New Mexico.
Yeah, so, the Cannabis Regulation Act had really good provisions for packaging and marketing to make sure that nothing was marketing to people under the age of 21, that there wasn't packaging that was, really appealing to young people, and that there was containers were made so similar to prescription medicine that they were more difficult for young people to open. And I think that that's been pretty effective. We definitely have had some instances, particularly edibles, making their ways to school. And I think that just like alcohol, just like with prescription medication, it's really incumbent on parents to ensure that when they make a legal cannabis purchase, that they're locking it up, they're putting it someplace where their kids wouldn't be able to access it, just like you would prescription medicine and alcohol. And there does seem to be a lot of concern about products that are advertised towards minors, or products that look like well-known candy or cereal. And if you come across those, more likely than not, those are from the illicit market. Those came into New Mexico illegally from California. And there is a way to report that on the Cannabis Control Division's website. And I think that it's really important that as a community, we come together and do everything we can to reduce the illicit market coming into our state, because those are the operators that are illegally going to be really compelling for minors and are going to have packaging that's attractive for young people.
Let's talk about Texans. I imagine that the state of New Mexico has siphoned off a little bit of income that the state of Colorado was enjoying from Texans. Tell us about their impact on the industry in New Mexico.
Yeah, for the very first time in the history of Colorado's cannabis program, at the beginning of the year, they had less revenue than they had the year before. And then the second month was the same thing. And that is absolutely because Texans are coming to New Mexico to legally purchase cannabis. And I think this is a great thing. I think that some of the behavior is not just coming across the border, making a purchase, and then taking it back. But actually coming to places like Ruidoso, coming to places like Carlsbad, to Angel Fire, which have dispensaries, and cannabis has kind of become part of the tourism allure of New Mexico during the ski season, for example. But again, places along the border, if you go 20 miles into Texas along the entire distance of the Texas-New Mexico border, it more than doubles the consumer population in New Mexico. And so businesses in places like Sunland Park, in places like Lovington, in places like Clovis, those are the ones who, really understood that there was an opportunity to market specifically to Texans and to reduce the length of their drive from Colorado. And that's why some of those communities are the ones that are really outshining the rest of the state in terms of revenue.
I wonder how medical patients have been affected by adult use sales. Are they still getting what they need?
Yes and no. I think that, at the same time the governor made the commitment to legalizing cannabis, she made the commitment to protect the medical program. Every single state that had a medical cannabis program that went adult use, the medical cannabis program suffered. And that seems to be the case for New Mexico. We're seeing a decline in the numbers of people enrolled in the medical cannabis program. I will say that when COVID started, we saw a huge jump in the medical cannabis program. So my hope is that this is not a decline that's going to continue forever. This is more of a correction. Medical cannabis patients, they don't have to pay GRT, they don't have to pay excise tax. They're able to buy products that have a higher potency. And I think that as we look to the future of our cannabis industry in New Mexico, I would hope that operators continue to create new products that are specific to medical patients, things like suppositories or really strong oil to help cannabis, to help folks who are suffering from chemotherapy symptoms, for example. So I do think that there's plenty of reasons for folks to stay enrolled in the medical cannabis program, but we will continue to see that correction. And it's a double-edged sword, right? We want to realize that tax revenue. At the same time, we also want to have a very vibrant medical cannabis program. But medical cannabis patients don't pay taxes. So, if there is a reason why the tax revenue isn't exactly what we hoped it would be, I think it's because we're doing a really good job protecting our medical cannabis program in New Mexico.
All right. Ben Lewinger, Executive Director of the New Mexico Cannabis Chamber of Commerce, thank you so much for talking with us today.
Thanks. It was lovely.
And on the one-year anniversary of legal adult use sales, Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham touted 2,000 cannabis licenses issued, 633 retailers, 351 producers, 415 micro-producers, and 507 manufacturers. One of those retailers joins us now to share her experience as one of the first women of color to become a multi-state operator. Marvina Thomas, welcome to KRWG Public Media. How are you?
I am wonderful. How are you?
Doing great, thank you. And I think aside from a retailer, you're also a manufacturer. In fact, you kind of started with manufacturing. Tell us about your background and what led you into the cannabis industry.
Well, my background is in nursing, and I've been a nurse for over 30 years. I got into the field because of my group homes where I was just trying to find a way to make money, to save money, to help my patients with like soaps, lotions, just stuff, daily needs that we needed. And I got tired of buying it because me and my husband were the ones who's paying out of our pockets for our patients. So I was like, you know what, let me take myself to school and learn how to make the products that my patients needed on the daily. One of my young ladies came in with the first layer of her skin burnt off from the pipe that blew it up in her face. And she came with some bacteria on her face. So I said, you know what, let me see if my soap would help her. Within less than a month, you could see that her complexion was coming back, the color was coming back. And I'm just like, wow, I think I have something here. So I went to my family and friends. I was like, look, I need you guys to try this product. And don't tell me you like it because it's me. I need you to just tell me. So if I need to tweak it or whatever I need you to do, then I'll go ahead and do it. But everybody was like, Marvina, I need more. I'm like, okay, good. So it went from just making products. And then I got curious about the cannabis because I remember, when I was a little girl, my parents used to use it, but they was using like for arthritis. My great grandmother used to make salves, for her arthritis because she didn't like taking pills. So I've learned at a very young age, about cannabis, but growing up as a teenager, I was never the type of person to smoke, drink. That wasn't me. I wanted to do something for the patients to treat them naturally. Okay. So I went to a meeting and I was like, oh my God, I need to learn more. I was like a sponge trying to soak. So I went from one meeting to another meeting to another meeting. And I was like, I really want to get into this. So I decided, you know what, let's do it. I'm going full blast. I had a meeting with my family first to let them know this is what I was going to be doing. They were like, you're going to do what? You go from here to here. And I'm like, yes, there's a reason why I'm going towards this. It's the health benefits is why I'm going for it. So it's like, okay. So I went on and made all this soap and everybody was loving it. And I was just like, okay, now I need to not just make it, I need to learn how to put both feet in and just go for it. Try to get a license.
Now, I wanted to ask you about your decision, because you live in Arizona, to actually start your business, Fourtwenty Collections, in Las Cruces.
Okay, so yeah, me living in Arizona, it was very hard to get a license here. So Parisa and I just said, you know what, let's go to Las Cruces. She's from there. So I was like, you know what, let's do it. She already knew a lot of people down there. So it kind of made it easy. So we filled out the application, and the only issue everybody would say it was an issue, was just the waiting game, for, the licensing part, the inspection part, with everyone. It was just like, oh my God, okay. 18 months passed, we're ready to rock and roll. So now that we're open, it's just been a blessing, let the truth be told. I thank God that I am open. And it's still like a dream, It's like, I've been saying it for years. I want to be the first Black woman to own a dispensary. I mean, I said it for 6 years to be exact. I want to be the first. I want to be the first. I want to be the first. And now that it is here, it's like, wow, I really did it.
I think it was.
All I can say is I'm blessed.
I think it was Tom Petty who said the waiting is the hardest part. So if that was your biggest challenge, that's a pretty ringing endorsement of the process in New Mexico. What kind of successes can you say that you've had since you opened your dispensary?
It's been amazing. So many people come up to me and like, I follow you on social media, or other women of color. It's like, you were inspiration to us to know to keep going and not to give up. And, I preach it all the time, speaking to, young women and men, that never give up on your dream. You have to keep pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing. To me, it's like a roller coaster ride. You got your ups and you got your downs. You got your ups and you got your downs. But I always say the ride has to stop one day, so you just keep pushing and keep pushing. And I also have to keep that armor on, because people will throw darts at you. And I just have to know in my mind that it's going to fall off. So I have to have my mindset that way, because if not, I'll be sitting here crying or 6 feet under, because I'm worried about what everybody else think about me. So like I said, that was the only challenge I had, was just the waiting game. But everything went so smooth for me.
What would you say that being a woman of color meant for your entry into this industry and moving forward? How has that played a role for you?
It's been a roller coaster, let the truth be told. And I'm speaking on Las Cruces, well, actually Arizona too, but Las Cruces, for me, I think it was just being accepted, being a woman of color. And it was funny because my nerves was really bad, not knowing how they were going to accept me. I've always tried to stay in the back end. I never wanted to show my face. Like, they were like, Marvina, we got to do this speaking engagement. We got to do this. And I'm like, no, you go ahead and do it. A lot of us, because some people, know if it's a woman, Black woman in the front center, is like, maybe I'll go somewhere else, But when I did show my face, they were like, oh my God, you go. I'm so happy for you. They want to give you a hug. And I'm just learning how to embrace it now, you know? I'm just learning how to embrace that. That's just it. Doors are opening. People are coming at me. And it's like, wow, I didn't expect this part, you know?
So you've talked about some of the ways that you have soldiered through. What type of advice would you have to offer other women, other people of color, as they enter this industry or maybe any other?
You know what? Never give up. Never, ever give up. Never let anybody dictate your dream. I had it happen to me. I had people try to put me down, or, oh, she ain't gonna do that, she's just talking. That's why I don't tell everybody my business. You know, I stay in the back and I do what I do, and then I come out and it says, surprise, I did it. So for the women or men that's out there, just stick with it. And it is hard. I'm not gonna tell you it's easy. It is not easy. You just gotta keep the smile on your face, man, and keep moving. That's my best advice. And keep God first.
Now, let me ask you, with your background as a nurse, what kind of experience can you talk about regarding cannabis from a medicinal perspective?
Well, you know, when I was in the nursing field, I did labor and delivery, postpartum, and peds. So coming out and doing, you know, my group homes, I got to see the mental health and the behavioral health aspect. Not so much of it as me being a nurse, but coming out of the nursing field, going into, you know, behavioral health and mental health. I see a huge difference with my patients that are using either a vape pen or even just using a cream because they're in so much pain. A lot of people are still against marijuana. A lot of people, but they have to understand you need to do your due diligence. Don't just assume because of what happened back in a long time ago, or they just assume that it's a gateway drug. Maybe it is for some people, but majority of the people it's not. They want the help and they don't want to keep taking all these pills. I have patients come to me all the time with bags of pills, and I'm like, "You was prescribed all this?" And they were like, "Yeah, I have to take this. And I'm like, hell, all these pills together is poison. You know, if a doctor's saying it's okay for a patient to use, you know, a vape pen, it could be CBD. It don't have to be THC. It could be CBD. As long as it's bringing their levels down and they're okay, then let them do it. I don't see what's a big deal. You know, I see a huge difference. I really do.
We mentioned your role as one of the first women to become a multi-state operator. New Mexico is now among 21 states where legal adult use cannabis sales exist. What do you think that says for the tide of legalization across the country? And do you foresee a time soon in the future when it could be legal federally?
I do. And I think it's coming soon. And I mean, everybody's getting, you know, in each state, you can see the difference now from 5 years ago to now. Everybody is getting their state license now. So, you know, and it's bringing more money to their state, you know. And everybody's crying they need money for their states, but here it is. Use it. So,
Marvina Thomas, founder and CEO of 420 Collections. Thank you so much for talking with us today and sharing your perspective with KRWG.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
That's our time for now. Join us this week on KRWG Radio. Every weekday, it's Morning Edition from 5 a.m. to 9, Fresh Air at 11, followed by Here and Now from noon to 2, and All Things Considered from 4 to 7 p.m. KRWG News is always online at krwg.org, and we'd like to hear from you. Email us with story ideas and video submissions. The address is feedback@nmsu.edu. We leave you today with some sad news from our sister station KENW-TV and FM in Portales. On April 6, 2023, Dwayne Ryan, Director of Broadcasting, passed away. For almost 50 years, he was the steady hand at the helm. He was an educator, innovator, and positively impacted the lives of so many. We send our sincerest condolences to his family, friends, and staff.
Dwayne Ryan started his career as an assistant professor at Eastern New Mexico University in 1967. It was always his dream to bring PBS and NPR to the region. His hard work and perseverance were realized when KENW-TV went on the air in 1974 and when KENW-FM signed on in 1978.
Well, at that time, we felt that the people of eastern New Mexico deserved to be able to see Sesame Street and the kids' programs and PBS programs.
Throughout the decades of his leadership, he built a welcoming workplace that inspired a dedicated staff and cultivated a nurturing environment that prepared students for their careers. Dwayne's kindness, understanding nature, and vision for KENW formed an incredible legacy that reflects his life's work. We leave you with Mr. Ryan, as he was known to his staff, signing KENW-TV on the air for the very first time.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the beginning of a new public broadcast station for eastern New Mexico and West Texas. All of us here are extremely excited about the prospects of this new station. And we say it's a beginning because, though we've worked hard thus far to establish the station, the real challenge and the real art comes now in using this tremendous medium to benefit all of the people living in the eastern part of New Mexico and West Texas.